Welcome to APUSH for 5, your shortcut to mastering the AP U.S. history exam. Let's jump into our midterm review, periods 1 through 4. If you can master these hard-level questions, you're well on your way to an A. Question 1. Stimulus. See excerpt. Question. Taken together, these excerpts best reveal which long-term development in Anglo-American conceptions of empire and destiny? A. The rejection of national self-interest in favor of collective internationalism. B. The decline of mercantilism and the rise of isolationism in foreign commerce. C. The shift from Protestant missionary zeal to secular humanitarianism and expansion. D. The evolution from commercial colonization to moralized expansion grounded in republican virtue. The correct answer is D. The evolution from commercial colonization to moralized expansion grounded in republican virtue. Both Hakluyt and Adams framed expansion as both economic and moral enterprise, shifting from imperial trade and divine mission to republican commercial virtue. This continuity demonstrates how economic expansion was repeatedly moralized across time, linking early empire to manifest destiny. Question 2. Stimulus covering questions 2 through 4. John Locke's two treatises of government, 1690, argue that property rights derived from labor and were essential to individual liberty. During the Homestead Act debates of the 1840s, reformers emphasized land ownership as a means of securing independence and moral virtue for citizens in the expanding republic. Question. Together, these statements illustrate which persistent feature of Anglo-American political thought and its evolution in the early republic? A. The belief that property ownership constituted the foundation of independence and civic virtue. B. The rejection of property qualifications as essential to democratic participation. C. The rise of state intervention to redistribute land as a social right. D. The expansion of hereditary privilege under the guise of republican liberty. The correct answer is A. The belief that property ownership constituted the foundation of independence and civic virtue. From Locke's natural rights to 19th century frontier democracy, property remained central to liberty and political identity. The connection reflects a long-standing conviction that individual land ownership secured independence and virtue, a thread running from Enlightenment liberalism to Jacksonian populism. Question 3. Stimulus. See image. Question. When viewed through a global lens, the Homestead Act's reinterpretation of Locke's ideas exemplifies what larger transformation in Western political economy? A. The subordination of economic rights to religious moral law. B. The universal rejection of private property in favor of state regulation. C. The shift from mercantilist empire to liberal expansionism that equated territorial settlement with human progress. D. The emergence of collective labor ownership as a critique of capitalism. The correct answer is C. The shift from mercantilist empire to liberal expansionism that equated territorial settlement with human progress. Locke's labor theory evolved into a justification for liberal territorialism, linking expansion, productivity, and progress. The U.S. translated moral property theory into a global model of settler capitalism. Question 4. Stimulus. See image. Question. How does the reinterpretation of Locke's labor theory of property in Homestead Act debates reveal a deeper ideological evolution within American republicanism? A. It replaced Enlightenment natural rights with romantic idealism that rejected economic materialism. B. It redefined property from an abstract natural right to a civic instrument, linking expansion, virtue, and democratic independence. C. It affirmed that property ownership was a collective rather than an individual moral duty. D. It reversed Locke's premise by grounding liberty in social equality rather than self-ownership. The correct answer is B. It redefined property from an abstract natural right to a civic instrument linking expansion, virtue, and democratic independence. The Homestead Act reframed Locke's idea, labor creates ownership, into a civic doctrine where landholding became proof of independence and citizenship. This shift fused natural rights with expansionist democracy. Question 5. Stimulus covering questions 5 through 7. The Royal Proclamation of 1763 sought to stabilize relations with native nations by prohibiting colonial settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains, restricting land claims beyond rivers flowing into the Atlantic. In Worcester versus Georgia, 1832, Chief Justice John Marshall affirmed that native nations were distinct political communities with territorial rights that state governments could not violate. Question. Together, these documents reveal what enduring tension in American territorial governance? A. The federal government's consistent enforcement of native sovereignty against state encroachment. B. The challenge of reconciling expansionist pressures with legal and constitutional limits on settlement. C. A permanent alliance between native nations and the judiciary to oppose white settlement. D. The early triumph of state sovereignty over federal authority in all matters of land policy. The correct answer is B. The challenge of reconciling expansionist pressures with legal and constitutional limits on settlement. Both the 1763 proclamation and Marshall's decision sought to restrict unauthorized settlement, but both were ignored. The continuity lies in the conflict between law and expansion, as legal protections repeatedly yielded to settler and political pressure. Question 6. Stimulus. Question. When compared, these two measures best illustrate which enduring problem in American territorial policy? A. The inability of legal or imperial authority to restrain settler expansion when economic and political incentives favored land acquisition. B. The consistent enforcement of indigenous sovereignty as federal precedent. C. The alliance between Britain and native nations to prevent republican settlement. D. The prioritization of states' rights over federal judicial decisions in all land matters. The correct answer is A. The inability of legal or imperial authority to restrain settler expansion when economic and political incentives favored land acquisition. Both efforts by British Crown and U.S. Court attempted to limit encroachment but failed under settler pressure, showing that economic motives often overrode law. Question 7. Stimulus. See image. Question. What key shift distinguishes the proclamation of 1763 from Worcester versus Georgia in how imperial and federal governments justified native policy? A. Both represented unified enforcement of native protection. B. Both claimed moral neutrality and economic fairness. C. The British employed evangelical rhetoric. The Americans framed removal as a humanitarian necessity. D. The British justified restraint as imperial order, while the U.S. justified removal as republican progress. The correct answer is D. The British justified restraint as imperial order, while the U.S. justified removal as republican progress. The British sought to preserve imperial control through limitation, whereas Jacksonian America rationalized removal as democratic advancement, revealing ideological inversion within expansionist continuity. Question 8. Stimulus covering questions 8 through 10. Pontiac's Rebellion, 1763, united Great Lakes and Ohio Valley tribes in a coordinated uprising against British military posts and settlers, seeking to defend native lands and sovereignty after the French withdrawal. Tecumseh's Confederation, 1811, similarly organized an intertribal alliance across the Midwest to resist U.S. territorial expansion and preserve native independence through collective unity. Question. The shared goals of these two movements best illustrate which enduring dynamic in native resistance? A. The recurring effort to construct pan-tribal confederacies, merging spiritual renewal with political unity to counter successive imperial encroachments. B. A coordinated transition from frontier warfare to market integration through British trade alliances. C. The emergence of acculturation strategies to preserve sovereignty within colonial legal frameworks. D. A pragmatic shift from militant resistance to diplomatic participation in Anglo-American treaty systems. The correct answer is A. The recurring effort to construct pan-tribal confederacies, merging spiritual renewal with political unity to counter successive imperial encroachments. Both Pontiac and Tecumseh envisioned unity that transcended tribal divisions, grounded in spiritual ideology and shared sovereignty. This continuity reflected adaptation rather than assimilation. Question 9. Stimulus. See image. Question. In comparing their rhetoric, what shift occurred in Native conceptions of sovereignty between 1763 and 1811? A. From spiritual resistance to material accommodation within U.S. agricultural programs. B. From intertribal diplomacy under imperial mediation to unilateral assertion of treaty-based autonomy. C. From sacred cosmological stewardship to a quasi-national doctrine of indivisible landholding grounded in collective sovereignty. D. From pan-Atlantic trade cooperation to exclusive alliances with the British Empire. The correct answer is C. From sacred cosmological stewardship to a quasi-national doctrine of indivisible landholding grounded in collective sovereignty. Tecumseh built upon Pontiac's spiritual unity to assert a political theology of shared nationhood, a radical evolution from cosmological guardianship to sovereign territorial claims. Question 10. Stimulus. See image. Question. What fundamental ideological transformation distinguishes British imperial from U.S. Republican approaches to native policy? A. Both appeal to divine providence as justification for limited tribal sovereignty under imperial trusteeship. B. Britain portrayed territorial restraint as a duty of imperial stewardship, while the U.S. reframed conquest as the democratic realization of progress and liberty. C. Britain imposed evangelical civilization programs, while the U.S. encouraged cultural pluralism through missionary neutrality. D. Anastan both grounded native subordination in shared Enlightenment humanitarianism and reciprocity. The correct answer is B. Britain portrayed territorial restraint as a duty of imperial stewardship, while the U.S. reframed conquest as the democratic realization of progress and liberty. The British contained expansion to preserve imperial order. Jacksonian America moralized expansion as republican destiny, disguising conquest as liberation. Thanks for watching A Push for 5. Let us know in the comments which questions you like the most. If today's practice helped you, tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any future videos. And share this with a friend who's also aiming for that 5. If you want more hands-on learning or direct feedback, reach out directly. We'd love to help you take your prep to the next level. See you in the next video.